Hello everyone, NoFumar again. Gonna go ahead and make a much better, much more improved gaming PC in my opinion. Um, I've done some more research. I've trying to figured some of the things out that I messed up on the last one, and I really think I've made a really good sub $1,000 gaming PC that will not only give you good performance for games, but it'll also give you good performance for rendering, movie editing, Photoshop, things like that. So I think this is an all-around good, great tank of a PC, and you can really use it for lots of different things. So without further ado, let's get started with the build.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started by talking about the processor that we're going to use for this build because pretty much the processor is going to define the motherboard that we need as well as some other different features. So I'm pretty confident that Intels are really good for their money. They make some really good quality equipment, so we're going to go ahead and go with an Intel. And we're going to use an Intel Xeon processor. And what a Xeon is it's a server processor, however they make them available for public use and stuff like that. So we're going to be using the Intel Xeon E3 1230 V2. Those numbers don't really exactly mean anything. It's not like, okay, well, the V2 is an i7, the V1 is an i5, something like that. You can pretty much ignore all those. So this processor clocks in at 3.3 gigahertz, but it supports turbo boost up to 3.7 gigahertz. Now the only issue with this is you can't overclock it. It's stock at a frequency of 3.3 gigahertz, can go up to the 3.7 like I said. However, you can't overclock it, so this is just what you're going to get. It's what you got to deal with. It is a quad core, and it fits the LGA 1155 chipset. So a lot of people ask, well, why use a Xeon, And I'm going to talk for a couple seconds about this. Xeons are great because they use a very small amount of power. This guy maxes out at 69 watts. I've read some documents about people having it, idle. The computer's just on it, sitting there at right around 40 watts. Some guy, I think, said he was fiddling around with his computer and he was able to get it down to 35 watts. And when you compare this with i7s and things like that, that run plus 100 watts, 125 watts, that's a significant difference. So when this thing's going ham, going hard, doing all your games or rendering or something like that, not pushing over 70 watts is going to be great for heat control, great for power consumption, and it'll just give you a very stable build. Another good thing about the Xeon is it has hyperthreading and can do a lot of great tools and different processes that it just handles very, very well. Like I said, it is a quad core, so it can handle multiple tasks at once, as well as this is pretty much like an i7 equivalent. However, it's an i5 price. You can get this guy on Newegg for right around 230 bucks. I have seen them go, plus or minus a couple dollars here and there. They don't really go on sale. However, these are really good. They're cheap. They get the job done. They're very, very dependable. And I just personally think that this is a hidden gem of processors. So if you get the opportunity, I definitely recommend it. Xeons are very good. So something also of interest with the Intel Xeon processors is they don't have onboard video. So unless you have a graphics card plugged in, you're not going to get any video out from your build when you just start it up. So you got to make sure that you have your graphics card in, otherwise, you'll be staring at a blank screen and nothing will happen. You might get some video out from the chipset on the motherboard, but I don't believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am. I've never heard of anyone doing this or having this issue. But anyway, so because it doesn't have the onboard video, it's able to use a lot less power, and that's how we were talking about earlier, the 69 watts. So really awesome feature, and just wanted to make sure to talk about that. And so taking this Xeon, we need the 1155 LGA socket type. We're going to find the motherboard that we need to plug this bad boy in. So let's go talk about the motherboard. Okay, so now that we have our processor picked, we need to talk about the motherboard that this guy is going to fit into. And the motherboard that I've chosen is the ASRock Z75 Pro 3. So this board not only supports our processor, however, it does also support i7s, i5s, i3. It does have that LGA 1155 socket type, which we need, and it does support the turbo boost, so that's an added feature that's going to really help us. Just some quick things about it, we don't have to go into everything about, the chipset and speeds and stuff like that, but it is going to support the memory that we have, which we're going to talk about later. You can overclock your memory up to 2800 megahertz. However, I don't believe we're going to probably need to do that. I think the memory that we're going to talk about, you can overclock to up about 2400 or 2133 stably, but anyway, it does support a maximum of up to 32 gigabytes of memory, so that's going to give us plenty of choices for that. It has one PCI Express 3.0 by 16 slot, one PCI Express 2.0 by 16 slot, a PCI Express slot, and then two PCI slots. Now this board does have 4 SATA 3 gigabit a second ports, as well as 2 SATA 6 gigabit a second ports, and you can support 0, 1, 5, and 10 RAID with some of the other instruments that you can plug into this board. This motherboard does support integrated graphics, so if you did have an i7 or i5 or something, you could use the attached HDMI or DVI or VGA ports on the side. But we're not going to be using that because of the processor that we have. This does have 2 USB 3.0 and 4 USB 2.0 ports on it, and 6 ports for audio. The good part about this is that it does have headers that you can use for the case that we're going to use in our in the happenstance that we're talking about, to use a front header for the USB 3.0 ports as well as audio, so you can plug in like your headphones or an external hard drive or something like that. That way you're not reaching around the back and having to fiddle with things like that. This is an ATX sized board, so it's going to fit really snugly and nice into our case that we're going to be talking about later. It does have 3 fan headers that you can use. You can probably rig something with the power supply to always have a fan running or something. However, this does have 3 case fans, 1 for the CPU, things like that. This is going to be more than enough that we need for our build that we're going to be talking about here. It's got the ports that we need, it's got the size that we need, and it's just got everything that we could want. It's got a great BIOS, for overclocking and things like that as far as the GPU goes, as well as just, your standard procedures that you want to make sure that you can get done. So anyway, that was the motherboard, and from here we are going to talk about the graphics card. Okay, so probably the most important part of this build that I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about is the graphics card. Now, when I was trying to figure out a graphics card to use, I was like, okay, do I use Radeon or this other random brand over here, or do I use NVIDIA? And I decided to go with an NVIDIA, and the reason being is there's an awesome piece of software that comes with NVIDIA cards above, I believe it's 650, and so anything a GTX 650 or higher, you get this really awesome feature. And that feature is that you get this this tool called Shadowplay. And so Shadowplay allows you to capture your gameplay, and then you can upload it to YouTube, Twitch, or something like that. And the awesome part about this is it doesn't use a lot of your CPU. It uses a special chip that's on the graphics card already. That way, you're not losing any frame rates or anything like that. You're still getting your great, 60, 70, 80 frames a second in your game. From the reviews I've read and stuff online, you don't notice any frames per second loss or any, oh my god, I have to turn it all the way down to medium when using Shadowplay. So Shadowplay is an awesome feature offered by NVIDIA, and I really wanted to make sure I could incorporate that into my build. And so the card that we're going to be using is a GIgabyte GeForce GTX 660 with 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's a 192-bit graphics card, and the RAM is GDDR5. Now, what does this mean? What in the world, who knows what those numbers mean off the top of their head? I guess if you know, graphics cards and all that, you probably, oh, okay, I know what he's talking about. But anyway, the reason I went with this one is it's probably the least expensive good GTX 660 series card that I could find. It's got an awesome core clock of 1033 megahertz with a boost clock that's supported by the GIgabyte software that comes with it. It boost clocks up to 1098 megahertz. And, that's going to give you reliable high frames per second. You can run modern games at either high or ultra settings. I've been reading reviews about this card. People are playing Borderlands 2 on ultra settings. They can play Crysis 3 on, high settings. Someone, I think, was able to push ultra, but, obviously their frames per second dropped. And I was trying to read up on, okay, like, how many CUDA cores do I need? What's the memory interface? Like, how many bits is good and stuff like that. And I'm just going to give you the simple rundown. Higher bits, like, 64, 128, 192, the higher you are, the better. It basically allows more lanes of traffic to go through for the memory, for, it doing its little processes. And then the next thing to talk about is these CUDA cores. I'm not going to lie, I don't exactly know 100% what they are. All I know is higher is better, so you want to get one with the highest amount of CUDA cores. And from my research, I found that, with the boost clock up to 1098 megahertz, the 960 CUDA cores, your GDDR5 memory, which is upclocked to about 6 gigahertz, which I find is pretty impressive. It's actually 6008 megahertz, but anyway, roughly 6 gigahertz. But I just felt like that was really, really great. This also does have SLI support, which means you can plug 2 cards into your motherboard and then have basically a cable running between the two, and you can up the performance of your gaming. However, I really don't feel like for this build we're going to need it because this is such a great card, and we are getting it for a good price. Right now on Newegg, it's going for about $179.99, so like $180. I have seen it go up to $189. I think there's random sales that go on left and right, but this is a really reliable card. Again, like I was saying, people were reviewing it saying their games had good frame rates. It's also got good cooling on it. It's got 2 fans, which for the most part, from what I understand, run silently, so you're not going to hear this card. This isn't a power horse of a card as far as noise goes, so you won't have too many issues with that. This does have 1 HDMI port, 1 display port, and then 2 DVI ports. So you do have the option for, I believe it supports up to 3 monitors. You can probably live with 2. I'm a solo 1 monitor person, so I don't think I'll need that for just my use for what I do. Next thing that we're going to talk about is the power supply for this build, so let's go ahead and talk about that bad boy. Okay, so for this build we're going to need right around, I did the math for it, and we're going to need right around 380 watts. So, with power supplies you only get about 80% efficiency, 90% or 75% efficiency, so, if you get 500 watts out of your power supply and your build takes 500 watts, you're really going to need a little bit more than that. You're probably going to need 600 watts because, you do the math out, you only actually get 530 watts. And sometimes you do need some overhead because, different voltages are required or different amounts of currents going through the wires are required. So the one that we're going to be using for this build is a Raidmax hybrid, 530 watts, semi-modular power supply. Now, what does semi-modular mean? Well, modular means that instead of having all the cables coming out of the power supply and then you have to wrap them around and store them or do some cable management, you get different cables and plug them in for only what you need. So it's really good for cable management and things like that. Semi-modular means it comes with your, everybody needs these cables, like your motherboard, your hard drive, and your graphics card. So pretty much I think those are the 3 ones that automatically are on there and you can't take them off. So, plug those in. It comes with the extra cables. You can plug them into, say you wanted to add another hard drive or something like that. Or you wanted, who knows, a floppy drive for Pete's sake. Who in the heck uses floppy drive? I don't know actually. But anyway, so if you wanted to use something like that, you go ahead and you plug in those cables. You don't have to have all these extra cables hanging around and dangling and getting in the way of things, getting stuck in fans or taking up room. So this is a really nice power supply for that. It does have a blue LED light in it. However, you can there is a button on it to turn the LED light off, which is what I'm going to be doing, so I don't have to deal with any of that. So the price on this power supply is $49.99, and it does work great. I've got great reviews on Newegg for it, and it does come with the cables and wires that you need, so for the most part this is a really good power supply that you shouldn't have to worry about. Now the next thing after the power supply that I'm going to talk about is the storage that we're going to use for this build. Now for our build I'd like it to be snappy, I want it to start up and boot fast. So what I then started to research was solid state drives, and I was trying to figure out, okay, do I want like a small one that's 60 gigabytes or one that's really big like 240 gigabytes, and eventually I did some research and I finally settled on a 120 gigabyte Mushkin enhanced Chronos solid state drive. Now this solid state drive has max sequential reads of up to 550 megabytes a second and max sequential writes of up to 515 megabytes a second. Everybody's different on how much they store, how many different files they're going to move around every day and stuff like that. So for me, I'm going to, a little bit of background. If I need to store a bunch of pictures or some videos or gameplay or something, I have an external USB 3.0 hard drive that I use. It's 2 terabytes in size, and I have no problem moving files back and forth between the computer and the hard drive. So what I'm going to be using this solid state drive for is installing the operating system, as well as installing a couple games that I put on it so that they load faster and so that Windows boots quicker. So with this solid state drive, with our operating system installed on it, we're probably going to get a boot time of just under 10 seconds. It'll be very, very quick and snappy. The programs that we install to it are going to be snappy, and it's just going to do a really great job of getting us what we need now. So we can't store everything on this, so what we're going to do also is install a 1 terabyte Western Digital Caviar Blue spinning hard drive, your standard hard drive that you had. This operates at 7200 RPMs. I don't feel like I need to go into too much detail about it. It's not, there's just not too much to talk about with hard drives. So this is a really great hard drive. It's very reliable. and it just gets the job done. And this Western Digital Caviar Blue runs for about $60 on Newegg, and the Mushkin Enhanced Chronos solid state drive runs for $80 on Newegg. And this is a great deal. You get a good bargain. You do save about $30 as to, compared to other solid state drives. So I really felt like it gave you a great bargain value, and you can get that snappiness and quickness and responsiveness for the PC that we're going to be building. So after this, we're going to talk about the memory for the PC. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So memory, I really shouldn't have to talk too much about. This is pretty much, this is what happens. This is what everybody buys. It's the G-Skill Ripjaws X Series 2 4GB memory sticks. So you get a total of 8 GB of memory. This is clocked at 1600 megahertz. It does have overclocking potential. It can get up to about, I think reliably, about 2133 megahertz. You can push 2400, however, I don't recommend it. Personally, I'm just going to be using it stock. However, the motherboard that we've chosen, the ASRock Z75 Pro 3, does allow you to overclock this memory very easily with its BIOS. So we're just going to throw this into our motherboard. It's going to get the job done, get all our programs running up and snappy and stuff like that. So it's going to cost us about $80, but for the price, you really can't beat it in the performance. So after the memory, we're going to talk about our optical drive and then penis. So after the memory, now we're going to talk about our optical drive that we're going to throw into this bad boy. So I feel like every computer should have an optical drive, just in case, something goes wrong, you need to back something up to a CD drive, or you have an old game that you'd like to install. So the optical drive that we're going to be using is a Samsung DVD burner. It's pretty much just a standard CD DVD drive. You can read, write to it. It does great. It just plugs into one of our SATA ports on the motherboard, and it's relatively cheap. It's only $20. I did some research on whether or not a Blu-ray reader writer would be worth it. It's just very expensive to write your own Blu-ray discs. I don't think any of us doing these gaming videos and stuff like that, or just rendering videos, is going to really have a camera of high enough quality to really take advantage of the Blu-ray stuff. I still think, the public cameras and things that everybody uses aren't that superior in quality. However, if you do need to use get a Blu-ray DVD optical drive or something like that, you can drop an extra $30-40. However, for $20, you throw this guy in your computer, you're going to be set to go. So now after this optical drive, we're going to go ahead and talk about our case that we're going to put all our things together in, and then pretty much be good to go. So the case that we're going to be using is a Corsair Carbide Series 200R. Sometimes it's just called the Corsair 200R case, and it is an ATX size case, so it should provide more than enough space that we need. This case does have two USB 3.0 ports on the front, as well as your standard speaker microphone. If you want to plug in a headset or a gaming headset that takes your pink and your green inputs for the headset and microphone, you can plug it in there. Or you can plug in an external hard drive, a flash drive, stuff like that. Our motherboard that we chose does have proper headers for this, so this will work out really, really well. The nice thing about this case is it has toolless entry. Now what that means is it's got these bigger screws that stick out of the back that you can just unscrew with your fingers. Gets the job done. I have heard that some of those screws rattle a little bit, but I think if you just tighten them down enough, you're not going to have that issue. This case does come with two 120mm fans. I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal for us as far as airflow goes. Our power supply has one built in. Our graphics card has one. The CPU is going to have one on it. So I think two fans is going to be optimal for us. However, if you need to, and as long as they're not loud fans, you can always throw an extra one on there or update them and put bigger fans on. However, this does have really good cool flow through it. The airflow through the inside is really optimal. Corsair has done a really good job. They've optimized this. It has a really nice aesthetic appeal to it, and it's all black. You don't see inside this case. That's one thing that I just really haven't gotten on the bandwagon with, is having an open case and seeing all the bright lights and stuff inside it. Sometimes I work late at night and I just don't want to have all these lights blaring in my face all the time. So we're going to go ahead with this Corsair 200R case. It is $65 on Newegg right now, so I think it gives you a really good bang for your buck, as well as including those USB 3.0 ports on the front, as well as ports for your headset. So the last and final thing that we're going to talk about is the operating system that we're going to throw in our build, and then I'm just going to wrap things up. So onto the operating system. So the operating system that we're going to be using is Microsoft Windows 7 Professional, and I like Professional because it gives you all the bells and whistles that you need. It's 64 bits, and there's just, I don't see a point in arguing anything here. You're not going to use the Steam OS or anything like that. So this is actually kind of expensive. This is $140, but you're not going to go wrong. Even though people vouch by Windows 8, or something like that, being faster, using less RAM. I've never had any issues with Windows 7, so we're just going to go ahead and throw it in the build. And now I'm just going to review everything, and we'll be good to go.
So there you have it. Just a quick wrap up. We went over our processor, the memory, power supplies, storage, all those fun things. We talked about, why things were good, why things were bad, why I chose one thing, why I chose another. Hopefully you learned some cool things, some tips maybe to put in your own build. Give me some suggestions for things that you did or things that this build could improve upon, something else to add or something to take away, something to swap out. But thanks for sticking with me and sticking through the whole video. I know it was a little bit lengthy, but I wanted to make sure I described everything in proper detail. I'm going to link all the list of the parts down below in the description. This build does come out to about $989. Obviously those are going to change plus or minus 50 bucks. Rebates are different every once in a while. So thanks again for watching, and tune in again some other time. I'm going to try and build more PCs, smaller, cheaper, less power, more bang for your buck, things like that. So talk to you later.